$552.47. That is what a 30% VA disability rating pays a veteran with no dependents in 2026. But 30% is the rating where that number stops standing still, because 30% is the first rung where the VA finally pays you more for your family. At 10 and 20%, a spouse and 3 kids added nothing. At 30, for the first time, every one of them counts. A veteran at 30 with a spouse and 1 child gets $666.47 a month, not the $552. Hold that gap, because most veterans never claim the difference, and it is just sitting there.
I'm Emma, and that is the whole story of 30%. It is the family line. Below it, dependents are invisible to your check. At 30 and above, your spouse, your children, and even your dependent parents each add a real monthly amount on top of the base.
Lay out why this rung is different, Emma, because that is the spine of the whole episode.
Below 30, the rate table is flat no matter your household. At 30, the table suddenly has columns for a spouse, for children, for parents. Same disability, but the VA now counts the people who depend on you. That switch only flips at 30.
Fenrir here, and let me say the part that costs people money. Reaching 30 does not add your family for you. The VA does not go find your spouse and kids. You have to tell them on a specific form, and until you do, you are paid as if you live alone.
Hi all, Grace. And strategically, that is the trap of this tier. Veterans celebrate hitting 30, then never file to add the family and quietly collect the single rate for years. The rating opened the door, but the dependents do not walk through it on their own.
A viewer sent in the exact question that frames this. Fenrir, read it out, word for word.
Here it is, exactly as written. I just hit 30%. I have a wife and 2 kids. Is my check supposed to go up for them, and how do I make that happen?
Yes, it is, and by the end you will know exactly how. So let us start with what 30% actually pays a family, straight from the VA's own page.
Let me put the real figures down, because precision is the whole game here. In 2026, effective December 1st of 2025, 30% pays $552.47 a month for a veteran alone, and it is completely tax-free. Now add a spouse, and the table does something it never did below 30. It goes up $617.47 with a spouse. Add 1 child on top, and it reaches $666.47. And it does not stop at the spouse and first child. A dependent parent adds about $52 a month. The point is the structure. The rating now has a column for every person who depends on you.
And here is the structural shift on the VA's rate table. 30% with a spouse is $617.47, and the table now carries its own columns for children and for parents. Below 30, that same table was a single flat number with no columns at all.
And here is a second thing that quietly changes at 30, beyond the check. Your VA healthcare priority improves. A 10 or 20% veteran sits in priority group 3. At 30, you move up to priority group 2, a higher priority tier for your care. And the parent figures are worth naming, because aging parents you already support can count too. At 30, a veteran with a spouse and 1 dependent parent reaches $669.47 a month, and with 2 parents, $721. Most veterans never even think to claim a parent.
There is also a smaller add-on for a spouse who needs daily aid and attendance, about $61 a month on top. It applies in a narrow case, but it shows the whole pattern. At 30, the VA is finally pricing your actual household, person by person, instead of paying one flat number.
So 30% does 2 things at once. It starts paying for your family, and it bumps your healthcare priority. But the family money is the headline, and it is worth seeing it built up 1 person at a time. Let us put real numbers on one veteran's household, one thing before the next part, and then we move right on. If any of this is clicking, tap that like, hit subscribe, and ring the bell for the next one. It takes a second, it costs nothing, and it helps more than you would think. Let us build our viewer's check. the veteran with a wife and 2 kids who just hit 30. Emma has the sharp question, so put it on the table.
It is the question every viewer is doing in their head. Start at the single rate and add his family one at a time. What does his check actually become once everyone is counted?
Start at the top. 30% alone, $552.47 a month. That is what he is being paid right now if he never added his family.
Now add his wife. The check rises to $617.47. That single step, just adding the spouse, is $65 a month he was leaving on the table. Add the first child and it climbs to $666.47. Then the second child, who is under 18, adds about $32 more on top of that. Every dependent is its own line.
Add the column and his real check lands near $698 a month, not the $552 the VA pays a single veteran. That gap, about $145 every month, is his family finally counted.
And put it next to where he came from. At 20%, that same family of 4 got a flat $356.66, his wife and kids worth exactly nothing to the check. One rung up, and they are worth real money every single month.
And this is not a one-time bump. That extra is paid every month. It rides up with the yearly COLA, and it grows as the family grows. Over years, claiming his dependents is worth many thousands of dollars to that household.
And the schedule keeps paying as the family changes. If a child is 18 or older and enrolled in school, that child is worth about $105 a month, far more than the $32 for a younger one. So the very same household can be worth even more a few years down the road.
Which makes never claiming even more painful. A veteran who skips the form is not just missing today's number, he is missing a check that would have grown with every child and every cost of living bump he never switched on. The loss compounds quietly for years.
So the money is real and it is recurring. The only catch is that none of it arrives until he files to add them. That trips up so many veterans that we called in someone who knows the dependent rules cold. Let us get her on the line. So how does a veteran actually turn that family into a bigger check? Rather than guess, we called in a guest who knows the VA's dependent rules inside out. Emma, set up what we want to ask her.
The heart of it is simple. Our viewer hit 30, he has a wife and 2 kids, and he wants to know the exact mechanics. How does he add them, who actually qualifies, and where do veterans trip up?
And the honest worry before she joins. A lot of veterans assume that once the rating hits 30, the system just knows about their family. It does not. So that is the first thing I want her to settle.
Let me bring her in now. Diane, thanks for picking up. Start with the question on everyone's mind: what does a veteran actually do to get his family added to the check?
Happy to help. The mechanism is one form, VA Form 21686C, the request to add or remove dependents. You list your spouse, your children, and any dependent parent with the supporting details, and you submit it. Until that form is processed, the VA pays you at the single rate no matter how big your family is. On who qualifies, it is broader than people expect. A spouse counts, a child under 18 counts, and a child between 18 and 23 counts if they are enrolled in a qualifying school program. A dependent parent you largely support can count too, and each one is its own separate line of money.
Diane, let me make the school-age piece concrete, because I think it is where people lose money. Say the child is 19 and away at college. Does the veteran still get paid for that child? And is there anything extra he has to do?
Great example, and the answer is yes, but not automatically. The VA drops a child from your award the month they turn 18 by default. To keep that child while they are in school, you reestablish them with a school attendance certification, and then they count up to age 23. Veterans lose that money all the time by assuming a kid in college still counts on its own.
And the reverse, the part nobody likes to think about. What happens when a dependent leaves, say a divorce? Does that cut the other way?
It cuts exactly the other way, and you must report it promptly. A former spouse comes off the award, and if you keep collecting the with spouse rate after the divorce, the VA later calls that an overpayment and claws it back. So the rule is symmetric. Report the additions to get paid and report the losses to avoid a debt.
Diane, this is the strategist's question. Where does the money actually slip away? What is the single mistake that quietly costs veterans the most?
The biggest one is simply never filing at all, so the spouse and kids are never added, and the veteran collects the single rate for years. Right behind it is the date. When you do file, push for the correct effective date, because a properly dated claim can pay you back to the marriage or the birth, not just from the day the form arrives.
That is exactly the clarity we wanted. Diane, thank you for jumping on. One form, claim everyone who qualifies, get the dates right, and keep the ages current in both directions. Let us take it from there.
Let me put 30% in context, because it does not replace what you already had, it stacks on top of it. Everything a 10 or 20% rating opened is still yours at 30, and now more sits beside it.
Concretely, the VA home loan funding fee waiver still applies because it is triggered by receiving service-connected compensation, not by the size of the rating, and special monthly compensation, the level called SMCK, can still stack on top for a veteran with that specific qualifying loss.
And the healthcare bump is real. Moving from Priority Group 3 to Priority Group 2 is a higher tier for your VA care. So 30% quietly upgrades the medical side at the same time it starts paying for your family.
But here is the honest limit, and I will keep saying it because it is where the money dies. None of the dependent money is automatic. The rating gives you the right to it, but a form delivers it, and the VA puts that form right here on its Manage Dependents page. A veteran who skips it is volunteering to be paid as if his family does not exist.
And one more thing worth real money, the effective date. When you add a dependent, push for the correct date, the day you married, the day the child was born. A properly dated claim can pay you back to that event, not just from the day the form lands.
Let me make the effective date concrete, because it is real back pay. Say a veteran married 2 years ago but only files to add his wife today. If he establishes that earlier date, the VA can owe him the with spouse difference for those 2 years as a lump sum, not just going forward from today.
And one fair warning, so nobody is blindsided. The same dependents that raise your check can, in a separation, be tied to apportionment, where part of the benefit is paid directly to a spouse or child. It is uncommon, but it is exactly why you report changes honestly and promptly in both directions.
So the move at 30 is simple to say and easy to skip. File to add every dependent who qualifies on VA Form 21686C and get the dates right. That one form is the difference between the single rate and the family rate. Let us close by making the whole thing concrete. So here is the reframe, said plainly. 30% is the family line. It is the first rating where the people you support actually change your check, and the difference is not small.
And it is the whole household, not just a spouse. Children under 18, children up to 23 who are in school, and dependent parents you support, each one is its own line of money added on top of the base rate.
So the strategist's verdict is one sentence. If you have hit 30 and you have a family, filing to add them is one of the highest paying afternoons in the whole VA system, and it runs through a single form. Do it and get the dates right.
And the skeptic's half, just as real. The money will not chase you. Hit 30, celebrate, and forget the form, and you will collect the single rate for years while a wife and 2 kids sit uncounted. That is the one mistake this episode exists to stop.
So let me put the real stakes on the board for the family veteran this episode is for. Stay unclaimed and the VA pays the single rate $552. Claim the same family you already have and it is closer to $700. Same rating, same family, one form between them.
And that gap is not a bigger injury or a better rating. It is the same 30%. The only difference between those two bars is whether the veteran filed the form that tells the VA who is at his dinner table.
And do not stop at the dependents. Everything the lower ratings opened is still here: the funding fee waiver, the possible SMC add-on, and now a better healthcare priority group. 30% is a real step up on every front.
If you forget every figure today, keep this. 30% is the rating where your family finally counts, and a single form is what turns that from a rule into a bigger check. Erica, take us out and put the question to them.
Here is what I want you chewing on, and drop it in the comments. If you are at 30% or higher with a family, have you actually filed to add every one of them, or is your check still paying you as if you live alone? Here is the one thing to carry out of today. 30% is the family line. It is the first rating where your spouse, your children, and your dependent parents each add real money to your monthly check, taking a veteran with a wife and one child from $552 to $666 and up.
My favorite number is the gap. The same family worth 0 at 20% is worth well over $100 a month at 30 every month, rising with the COLA. Same household, one rung up.
And the thing I will not let go of is the form. None of it is automatic. File VA Form 21686C, claim everyone who qualifies and keep the ages current, or you are paid as if you live alone.
My move for you this week. If you are at 30 or higher, pull up your dependents on file and check that your spouse, every child, and any dependent parent is actually listed. If anyone is missing, that is your highest paying afternoon.
Quickly before we wrap, a small ask that actually matters. If this earned it, tap like and hit subscribe. Every one of those helps build the series so more people who need this can find it. Keep these notes close and put them to work this week. Thanks for watching. This is Professor Erica.